I'm Mohana, and HR Unplugged is brought to you by Better Place exclusively for each one of you. From creating designing values to actually creating organization structures, next-gen cool policies, CHROs are playing such crucial roles across organizations. In HR Unplugged, we aspire to bring to you some of the coolest people, most courageous leaders of the industry who have actually helped shape the landscape of people through industry itself. And simply put, they're some of the most amazing people, interesting work that they have done, and hold a larger than life attitude. So come join me as I deep dive and have meaningful conversations with our CHROs and HR leaders and understand their thoughts and get to know them better. See you there. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of HR Unplugged. Today we have Mr. Anish Philip, who is Movate's CHRO and President of Bangalore chapter of NHRD. I'm looking really forward to actually talking to him on a variety of topics, and especially because his career has been about capability, skill building and learning. Doing multiple things at the same time and balancing all of that. Let's see how he actually does it. So see you there in the conversation. Hi Anish, good morning.
Good morning, Mona.
And big welcome to HR Unplugged, and it's brought to everyone and to you by Better Place. So it's our pleasure to have you here. It's the first time I think you're visiting us, right?
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here, Mona, visiting the office. And also this happens to be my first such interaction.
Yes, this is really picking up. Podcasts are the in thing now. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So Anish, I know that we actually very recently collaborated with NHRD and through your new role as the president of the Bangalore chapter particularly. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you know, it was wonderful to actually collaborate with your team. Just to look at what the state of the frontline workforce is, and that's a space we are operating in, so that was a great experience. Through your new role with NHRD, tell me a little bit about, you know, what's your aspiration for NHRD? Where do you see the future of HR going?
Yeah, sure, Mona. So, you know, we've just taken up this role from August, and I would be with NHRD as honorary president for the next 2 years. And in this 2 years, you know, what really we are aspiring for, first is to really connect with members, right, and extend that particular network as such. NHRD stands for capability. I think what is more important is the early to the mid-stage HR fraternity. I think that there's a lot of capability building that is required, and that's going to be the key focus area for me. And the third thing is, how can we build relevance within the HR community? And for this, you need a partner with a lot of companies who are broad-minded, who are up the value chain, you know, who are futuristic, and that in turn helps the HR fraternity as well. I think these are some of the key things that we would be looking at.
No, that's great. I think it's a skill market and it's getting more intense in that space itself. So it's great to see that NHRD is continuing its focus right in that area. So Anish, I think when we work together, what I like most about you and your entire persona is that you're so calm and so, you know, positive about everything, right? So how do you do that? And what is that characteristic that, you know, has helped you sort of shape yourself towards this? What can everybody here who's listening learn from that?
I think you know, Mona, that would have actually come to me, you know, in how my upbringing has been, right? To, you know, right from my schooling to how my parents were, you know, how they brought me up to the workplace. And I think I've spent a lot of time, you know, starting right from a consulting organization to working with a startup, Mindtree. So I think a lot of my learnings has been at Mindtree, where I've spent 19 years. So, you know, the calmness actually comes in from there. Perhaps when you look at people, you try to follow certain role models, right? And perhaps that is what has helped me to be the way I am.
Yeah, and it's helpful in tough situations, right? Especially during conflicts. And also what I felt is through our interaction, it helped us collaborate. You know, when you don't know stakeholders, you're virtually working so much. That was just a beautiful experience. Yeah, so I wanted just the audience to learn and observe that as well.
Thanks.
So, you know, some of these characteristics that you've developed over time, right? What have they been to build such a successful career? You've now been in the industry for more than, you know, 20 years, 25 years. So what are 2 or 3 things that we all can actually take away?
I think from my perspective, I think HR leadership is all about first is being calm. You know, you need to embrace uncertainties. Uncertainties can come up every time, so one needs to be ready. One needs to look at how to act according to the situation. I think the situational leadership is something which is very, very important. The second thing is you are successful only what your team is all about, right? So I think having that people first approach, having a democratic approach, taking views from everyone, I think that's the second trait that I would always look at what needs to be done.
Sure.
And skill is a currency at this point of time, right? And I would say every individual should be on a learning curve every day, right? Things are changing so much. So I try to work with the academia, students, mentoring them, or it is meeting people. It is really about, you know, learning what is relevant from them, you know, thinking them to be my mentors. And there's something to learn from everyone.
Yeah, it's what we called as reverse mentoring, right? And back in SAP when I worked, there was so much of that concept because the new folks who come in have better skills than any of us put together, right?
Absolutely.
And I love that point on situational leadership. And just a few minutes before we started this podcast as well, we talked about the fact that, you know, bigger companies, there's, you know, the whole quarter-on-quarter approach, but then I was sharing with you that in a startup, it's a day-on-day approach, right? So I think it's very important to be agile as well.
Absolutely.
So let's just rewind a little, and I know that you've spent, like you mentioned, 19 years in Mindtree. I still remember in 2005 when I started my career in Fidelity Investments, Mindtree was a big deal.
Right.
And back then, as it is a services industry, ITES industry was coming into India. And for us, it was Mindtree with Subroto Bakshi, right, if I'm correct. And the thought leadership that the organization honed, I thought was amazing. It was very ahead of its time.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious to understand and share back with everyone that what were those core principles to define HR practices, right, and people practices in the organization that Mindtree actually held?
No, great. Yeah, so like I told you, you know, a lot of my learning has come from Mindtree as an organization, and it was primarily the first and the foremost thing, the company, the individuals that were there. I think it was a group of like-minded set of people. 10 founders were there. I think everybody had that people first approach sort of thing. Different things that we would do, right? It was not about ego, it was being humble leadership, right? I think that was the most important thing. And it is people, the approach was about people first, profits later. I think that was again a very core philosophy which was there. And we would have done everything for people, you know, looking at how that individual will feel. How would you empathize? You know, one needs to empathize with individuals. I would say that was a time when we were also very, very different in terms of it was a completely open door policy, no cabin approach. So anybody could walk in. Even the CEO of the company didn't have a cabin on that. So those were some of the very unique practices that were there at that point of time. You know, everybody sitting together, you know, working together. I think these were some of the things. There was no separate canteens. You know, everybody eating from the same place, the same food, the same you know, joyful thing. So we used to say Mindtree Minds and extended Mindtree Minds. So there was a lot of focus on the extended families as well.
Interesting.
So that was, I think, few of the core philosophies, you know, which the company was built on.
Actually, I think around then, the culture of the industry at large was different. So I think this was pivotal to make that shift, right? Which became less hierarchical and more inclusive, right? Because people today who are working very newly may or may not understand how things used to be, right? So I think it was very transformational. And I think it was a great brand, and the way things were brought out from a people perspective, a lot of other companies try to emulate and learn from it as well. Yeah, so must have been.
And I also joined the company because obviously there was a lot of, you know, that time also there was a startup sort of thing, you know, this is way back in 99, in 2000 I'm saying. And, you know, when I heard the names of people, different set of companies, Business World had covered an article, then one of my friend actually, senior from college actually pulled me into Mindtree, and I said, okay, let's go for it.
Let's go try it. What an amazing journey.
And that was from a consulting, so it was not an easy shift from that perspective, because always in campus you have, yes, I need to be part of the consulting organization first. But then this was a great journey. I thought I'll always get back to consulting, but then Mindtree just grew. People were great. What else do you need? You learn along the way.
So thanks for sharing that, Anish. That's a wonderful experience, I'm sure, for 19 long years, right? So let's move back to where you are now. It's incredible how we were just talking also that your Saturdays, Sundays, and long number of hours, you're sort of balancing this new role that you've sort of embarked upon. You're still the CHRO of Movate, and you're actually doing this whole, the next phase of what NHRD in Bangalore could actually impact the industry through. So how's that journey? How are you balancing things?
Yeah, so it's not, it's not easy, wearing two hats and working. And, Movate itself is a fast growing organization. The last 4 years, we've been growing at a 20% sort of growth rate. Every 4 years, we've been doubling ourselves, and then that's basically what the plan is over the years. So when an additional responsibility comes along your way, it's not easy. But I think work-life balance to me is all about, for the individual to manage, right? And one needs to really be, you need to plan it out. You need to work on that particular thing. The second aspect, as I said, is it is possible for me because I have a great team. Right, be on both sides. So I think that helps the cause. The third aspect I would say is, it's a network of friends, well-wishers who are there. You just a call away from them, right? I think these are mentors. Multiple people are there who will help you along the way. And I think most importantly, I should not leave the family aspect out of it. I think that's also plays a very crucial role in managing those expectations out there. So I think it's a combination of things which everything has to fall in, it has to get aligned to make things happen.
No, that's beautiful. And I think you're never alone. There is always someone who's enabling, the path you're taking. So that's really the journey and also, Anish, there are so many options these days, right? People don't have to be limited to a job. And that's my personal view as well, that if your job is good, it's great, but there's so many other ways to develop yourself continuously, and there are opportunities, which probably was not there 2 decades back, right? So that's something that is observable. But on that note, on jobs itself, right, I want to bring in a lens of technology, and I know that, you're someone who's very keen in that space. So this whole space of HR tech is, is what the buzz is right now, right? But with generative AI, and I know NHRD is working, to explore that a lot more through your research and other engagements. So what is your take on how it's going to impact, HR? How is it going to impact jobs at large? Is it something we should be worried about? It's an overstated question, but I'd love to get your views.
So, Mona, to me, the tech and HR and jobs, that has always been the question for years. And we've seen that. Whenever there is a technology adoption that happens, the first fear that everybody has is, will people lose their job? Will I lose my job? I think more than anything, it's about a mindset change that has to be there in everyone. And if you look at history, technology has only enabled. It has helped create more opportunities. I think going forward also with AI or anything new that is going to come in, I don't know what's new that would be there tomorrow. I think it would create many more opportunities for people. Especially when I look at India as a market today, I think everybody is talking about India as a market. I see more and more people wanting to come back from other countries. Earlier, people used to migrate because of opportunities or the lack of learning that would have been there. Today, that is no longer the case. And we will see a very, very different, at least that's how I see it. When I read certain things, when I hear, India is going to be a very, very different market. The world is going to be very different. And technology is going to be only an enabler. So what is more required is a mindset shift in each of us to say that that's not going to be a it should not be a cause of concern to everyone.
Yeah, and predominantly, Anish, we're seeing that impact is being experienced by the white collar industry, right? And the space that at least Better Place and I'm sort of indulging in a lot is how do we uplift the frontline workforce, right? Absolutely. And I cannot reiterate that in India alone, you have 400+ million people who are falling in the blue collar and grey collar workspace. Absolutely. And your frontline workspace has not received the love that, you know, a white collar industry has faced, right? It's so much more regulated, there's far more greater rights for all of us, right? So what can be done, what should be done actually to transform the landscape? One aspect is, yes, it's predicted that, you know, tech can transform, tech can bridge the supply and the demand, but there's so much more than that, right, at a policy level. And
no, absolutely. No, so I'm not an expert on that particular thing, but obviously, you know, my views on that particular thing is about, I think policy plays a big role out here. And today, I think we are seeing a lot of changes that is happening, right? Be it on, you know, at the level of the government or at the level of companies, what they're trying to do. I think the second thing is companies are also becoming very conscious of contributing back. Okay, it is not just about companies from the CSR perspective and all. I think it is becoming, you know, a part of their mission, vision and things like that. I think ESG, adoption of ESG norms and things like that is again going to be one very critical aspect where, you know, what is the supply chain, what are some of the practices, are companies following fair practice? I think there's a lot of awareness also that is today that exists. I think that's the next thing. The third part I would say is on the individual side of it, right? So the individual responsibility. So the ability to give back. I think everybody wants to contribute in some way, right? I think I see there are a lot of folks individuals I'm saying who are doing tremendous work, you know, which might not be visible because what is visible is when companies are doing some things, you know, they have the power of branding, marketing, but there are so many individuals who are doing great work and that gets missed out always, right? Technology, like you said, I think technology should be democratized. Right, it should be made available to a lot more people. I think the power of the mobile phones is changing things significantly. I think so. The whole thing around frontline workforce, what we had seen a decade back or a couple of decades back to how we are going to see in the next 10 years, 20 years, the next few decades is going to be completely different is what I would say.
And I think, you know, even from what NHRD's core is on building competence, like you mentioned, right, and capability at large, right, even the frontline workforce is benefiting so much from just having a mobile in the skilling area itself.
Absolutely.
And that's where we had explored that how do you actually transition careers and build careers for them. So skilling at the core also would make a difference.
So like I mentioned, skill is the currency, skill will be the currency, right? Is the currency, will be the currency going forward.
No, that's great. And it's also enabling multiple job access, right? So let's just spend some time a little bit on the gig space itself and being from IT industry at large, right? So deeply, I'd love your views on what does it mean for India at large from a gig point of view. We still have these controversial debates, right? Where is it only about one company? Is it multiple? But the next generation, I think, wants agility. They don't want that feeling completely that I only belong here, right? It's coming from a different thought process itself. So how can we evolve, and what do you feel about the whole gig, you know, environment?
So I think while this whole gig concept again has been there for years, but never really proclaimed the way it would have been, and we are seeing significant, you know, again a mindset sort of shift that is happening for people to be, you know, acceptance of the fact that yes, gig is fine, it's good. I think to me the gig comes in, okay, it is all about having that flexibility of work, right? The second thing is about expertise. So if I'm an expert in certain areas, then yes, I would want to do, you know. The third aspect to me is about, you know, diversity of work also that can come in, different industries and things like that. So gone are perhaps the days when someone would look at, you know, I'm going to retire from the company, right? That's really not the thing. So a lot of people are following that particular model and doing that. Now, just coming from IT, you know, a lot of people feel that IT might not have, gig work to that extent. No, that's not true. It is absolutely out there, and it could be for different functions and all.
Yeah.
So Mona, let me tell you, Movate has a gig platform, right? And where we get people across different countries to come on that platform. So you can actually put in a job, folks will come, do the job, get paid for it, move on. So, you know, even in the IT industry, you know, it is very much there. And, you know, there are multiple companies that are actually doing that.
They've started exploring that. So these are external people who come in and join.
External people who will come and do that. So your policies, practices and all have to be a lot more different, because here you have intervention, a direct intervention from HR people, you're seeing them. There is no intervention from that perspective, right? So I think these are some of the changes that is obviously happening. And to me, the future is all about a lot more of gig engagements are going to be there.
I think that's really, really promising. And I love the space as well. And I think with the speed of work that we all do, you know, setting the time aside to create different channels of like, you know, exploring what part of your business can be run through gig is very crucial to make that, take that step, and then you'll realize that it's actually self-sustainable. A lot of the business comes and says, hey, actually I need this short-term painful thing to be sorted through the right skill, which we may not always have internally as well, right? So that takes leadership, vision, right, to a large extent, and brings me to my next question as well. Most of my, there are certain points, pivotal points which have been exponential in learning, because I got the opportunity personally as well to work with certain type of leaders. And I have, and you know, much is said about the fact that people leave organizations because of their people leaders, unfortunately. But at the same time, it can be so different if you meet the right person in your life who can actually believe in you and then help you really, really transform, right? So I'd love to get your views on leadership. What is it for the next generation that's so different from the previous one? How should we be thinking of our leadership styles?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you rightly said, you know, we are all, because we would have seen some people, we would have actually got influenced by them. I think that's true in my case also. You know, where I have seen, you know, emulated certain leaders and have tried to follow their path. But I think for the next gen sort of leaders, and here you're saying not just HR, any general this thing. I think the first and the foremost is about that humble leadership. I think has to be there. If we look at the current generation, you know, from millennials to Gen Z, you know, whatever we actually say, I think they are much more smarter, you know, than anyone. There is access to so much of information and things like that. I think we should be looking at learning, you know, it has to be the other way, right? So that humble leadership, you know, is something which is very important. I think leaders have to play the role of coaches, right? And, you know, how to mentor them, work with them, right? I think that's it. A third aspect of leadership is also about, you know, that ambiguities, uncertainties. You know, how do I navigate that particular thing, right? So that becomes a very, very crucial, crucial element, you know, from that perspective. I think these are some of the key elements, if I don't drill it down into multiple other things, but the, you know, same. And the fourth element to me is that it has to be, every leader has to be a learner on a daily basis. Right? I think that's again a very, very critical aspect of things. We've seen great leaders coming down, okay, at some point of time. We have seen great companies, you know, coming down at some point of time, because everybody has a certain level of competency. And if you're not, you know, upping that competency, if you're not looking at reskilling, upskilling ourselves, I think that's where the problem comes in. So I think that's, and all these things are very, very important traits for leaders.
Anish, you said something that got my attention completely, which was on being humble, right? What stops us from actually being humble? A lot of people that I have interacted, and you notice, you read about it. What is it that stops us, right?
No, I think it could be I think every individual is very different to me, Mona, right? It's about what is the sort of pressures that one can take, right? It's about believing in the team, right? I think there are a lot of elements that comes into play, and if someone, you see is, I don't think any individual is bad from that perspective.
Yeah.
It is the situation that is there, and you might see, instance or a discussion that happens now, which might be a rough situation.
Sure.
The next moment, the person might be hugging you.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it is for every other individual also to understand the other side of the story, right, and be empathetic towards your leadership also, right, and then working across. So situations change. Individuals also, we have to look at it from different lens.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it takes a lot of maturity and understanding, and that's why relationships matter a lot. Absolutely. Right? It takes time to sort of build that trust as well. So thanks for sharing that. I want to come to another very sensitive question, and we are moving closer to the last last portion of the podcast itself. Emotional health, mental health. WHO actually says that there's no health without mental health, right? There are two parts to it. Some say that it's making everyone very fragile, but on the other end of the dimension, it is true that you're actually acknowledging that there's a lot of trauma as well, right? We need to actually work towards strengthening our own emotional capabilities as well. So for the next generation, which is so vocal about this topic, they want to be seen, heard, and have a view, and also access certain emotional health counselors or any other initiatives that organizations or they by themselves want to actually be emotionally fit, right? So what is your view, on how do we actually get future ready on this particular topic?
On the mental
health space itself.
No, I think today, it might still be, the percentage of people or companies as a focus area would be really at the bottom, but I think there's more awareness that is coming.
Sure.
To me, mental wellness and the work or the work design that is to be put by HR and companies is interlinked.
Sure.
You have great work, you have, managers understand this is the sort of amount of work each individual can do, that is good for their productivity to their capacity. I think the productivity, the mental wellness comes in.
Sure.
Because we have to understand what is the pressures. Is the individual learning?
Sure.
Why is the individual not able to do that?
Yeah.
Do that work? I think once that consciousness comes in, it actually comes in.
Sure.
What are some of the rewards and recognition mechanisms which are there in place? So all work, no play, no party. I don't, think that is again a nice way to have it. So today companies are doing things in isolation, but I think if you look at holistically, it's somehow supports the cause of mental health. So finally, it is the work environment, the people around you. I think all these things play a role in that.
Yeah.
Today, companies are also looking at, I think we are also not trained from that perspective to look at what is mental wellness, to how do you identify. I think today individuals, companies are also becoming a lot more aware. There are specialized training programs which today exist, right, as to how to deal with people in such situations. Right. So overall, the construct has to be at the company level, and I think then everything works.
It's still nascent, is what you feel, right? And we have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
And it reminds me of this this beautiful podcast that I watched, which had Lori Gottlieb. She's basically an American psychiatrist, and she talks about how in life we don't actually acknowledge each other's grief. We don't know how to be in another person's grief, right? So if you have a breakup, you'd say that, hey, let's just move on. You'll be fine. It's just 2 months. You'll be okay. But the moment is lost. So similarly, you're absolutely right. You don't know how to recognize it first of all, and then when you see it, the other person sharing it, we don't know. We're not equipped with skills to deal with it. So I think at a fundamental human level, organizations are about people, right?
Yes,
we are about interactions.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think it makes a very big difference. So hopefully there's more work and more consciousness around that.
Absolutely.
Space. Great. So lovely getting your views, Anish.
Thanks.
I want to come to the last section and let's have some fun, okay? And
Absolutely.
it's a rapid fire that my team has put together for you as well.
Yeah.
So it's just a word or like a quick sentence.
Sure.
So you're fine. We can start.
Yes, absolutely. Let me give it a try.
Okay, good. So the very first thing is the future of people, gig versus single job.
Gig.
Gig is it? Okay. If you get a chance to change one thing in the existing labor law, what would it be?
Multiple things, but the one thing which I would perhaps change is consistency. Now, labor laws, the definition of wage to workman to multiple things is different in different laws. I think that consistency has to be there. The second thing is, if a company is operating in multiple locations, can it be the consistency of laws that can be implemented across all the states?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I would love to change.
That's amazing because it's very crucial, and all of us can challenge each other on what is the workman versus who's the work. It's quite it's required. I agree. The third thing we have for you is sustainability, a boon or a bane?
Boon.
Okay. Major focus areas for NHRD. Okay, one focus area for NHRD which is coming in this year.
Capability building.
Okay. Most rewarding part of being NHRD Bangalore president?
Meeting like-minded people, better people, or I would say more intellectual set of people.
Okay.
That is the most rewarding part of it.
That's always a pleasure,
yes.
right? A piece of unconventional advice you've received in your HR career?
Okay, again, so I would say this is way back early in my career, and the advice was, roses are pruned. That's the word. What it means, in my context that it was meant was, this was in my early days, was upset with my appraisal rating that I got from at the peak to average, when I felt it was really about I did so much of work, I slogged and things like that. So one of the senior leaders, the founders, actually came and said, gave me a small gift and said, I know you're upset, but roses, do you know why roses are pruned? And it was all about, the roses are pruned because then you see the growth of a flower happening in a very different way.
Yeah.
I think that was a small 3 words, but it meant a lot to me, and after that I've never complained about any of those things.
No, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Anish. One obvious thing that most HR people miss out on?
I think it's a continuous learning part of it, and I think that's one thing which I feel most folks miss out on. But the most critical aspect is about being aligned to business.
Sure.
I think that's very, very crucial.
Sure. Yeah, very critical. And one advice for budding HR leaders or CHROs?
Budding, I think skill is the currency. Let's look at learning on a continuous basis, not be worried about what disruption is going to happen. Disruption is going to happen, but it's surely going to create more opportunities.
Yeah, I think what I take away big time here is that there's a lot of uncertainty, and skill is the way to actually keep yourself focused and grounded.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Anish. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, Mona.
Very focused conversation on multiple, important and pertinent industry issues. I loved talking and learning from you. And we'll be connected, and thank you for sharing this with our audience as well.
Thanks, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.